Hi YouTube, this is Raven. I'm a survivor of a 16-year marriage to a covert narcissist, and now I'm in the middle of a divorce from a covert narcissist. And I've done a series of videos called Narcissists Are Ridiculous, and I think this will be number 5, but it's about narcissists are ridiculous when it comes to boundaries. So really this video is more about boundaries. But as I've said in other videos, I was married to a covert narcissist. His parents were narcissists as well, or at least his father, I believe, had narcissistic personality disorder, and his mother had borderline personality disorder. And I think at some point I'll do a video describing the two disorders, because I think sometimes the two disorders can be comorbid. They can exist together, because I think that possibly my covert narc has some elements of borderline personality disorder. But as far as my marriage was concerned, I was not married to just my narc. It was a plural marriage. And what I mean is that I didn't just marry him, I married his entire family. Because his family knew no boundaries whatsoever. They were into your business no matter what. And I think I've watched some other videos, I think it might have been Ollie Matthews, that says that, narcs are just very, very curious. I mean, they're almost like cats. They're curious and into everything you do. And that was the way it was with my narc in-laws. I mean, they knew no boundaries whatsoever. And what was funny is that they actually gave me a self-help book on boundaries. And it was about a year before the marriage broke up, and I thought it was hilarious that here, they were breaking boundaries, yet they're giving me a book on boundaries that I need to read. I remember thinking, it's like, you need to read this book first. But, nothing was secret in our marriage. Anything that I wanted held in confidence, eventually, the narc would tell his parents. We were saving up money for our first house, and so of course he had to go and tell his parents, oh, Raven has saved up so much money for us to get our first house, and he told them exactly how much money we had in our bank accounts. And I was like, that's something that should be private, If I got a raise, he had to tell them how much I got in the raise, how much he got in the raise. It was just, they were always into our business. It was even when we were having miscarriages. We had 3 miscarriages, and we got to the point to where I wanted to adopt. And so he calls up his parents to get their opinion, like, should we adopt? And his dad, of course, said, well, I really want you to have your own child, meaning genetic-wise, before you adopted. That he didn't like that concept that we were going to, bring a stray into the family, pretty much. But, as far as boundaries goes, my mother-in-law, oh, that's my cats, they're up to something. My mother-in-law was acted like she wanted to be very involved when we finally did have children. And one of the things that she did is she showed up when I was in the hospital ready to have a C-section. She shows up and she's looking at my IV because she was a nurse, like, oh, this is running way too fast. No, we don't need to have this many milliliters of normal saline per hour. And so she's messing with the titration on my IV. And I remember laying there like, someone stop her, please. Like, the doctor has ordered a certain amount of fluids for a reason. I'm going into surgery. I need this amount of fluid to keep my blood pressure up, when they're cutting me open. And no one's stopping her. She showed up at my sister-in-law when she's giving birth. I mean, she showed up, as soon as she heard that she was in the hospital, and she's there, like, giving her advice about how she should be pushing and how far are you dilated. And, she's trying to look to see. And, it's like no boundaries. It's like, no. But, another, instance of boundary violating was, on our wedding night. I mean, we just gotten to the hotel. We've just gotten married. They called the hotel room, and they called, now, normal people would not call someone on their wedding night, because that they're in the honeymoon suite, what's going on. And they called, and, they were telling my narc husband, so-and-so gave you some money at the wedding, and we thought that you might want to have it, so we're just going to come by. And so my narc, he's like, oh, okay, yeah, just come on by the hotel, when you get to the desk, here's the room we're in, just come right on up. I looked at him like, are you insane? What do you mean just come right up? This is our wedding night. And so he's, oh, you're right, let me call back. So they call back, how about you just bring it by the hotel, or no, just come have breakfast with us tomorrow morning. So, the next morning, so I'm on my honeymoon, and I'm having to have breakfast with my mother-in-law. And she's sitting there like,
Oh, Raven, you look so relaxed compared to yesterday.
And I'm sitting there like, this is my life. I didn't marry just this man. I married all of them. But the boundaries, if there was a boundary, they would just cross over it. I would spend days and days cleaning my house before she came because she was very, very judgmental, especially about a clean house, because she would clean constantly. She would clean hours and hours a week. She'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, even though she didn't have to be at work till 9. She'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to clean her house. And so I would clean and clean my house. She would get there, and if it wasn't, to her standards, she would go and get the vacuum cleaner out, and she's vacuuming my house. And I remember one time she was vacuuming, like, oh, this is so wonderful, I just can't stop. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, hell yeah, you can stop. Put the damn vacuum cleaner down, woman. But, she did that. Now, what makes me feel almost like karma is coming back is that now that my narc has a live-in girlfriend, I've heard from my kids that, oh yeah, Nana comes over and she vacuums and cleans Dad's condo now. So I know, that she thinks that, this woman is obviously not keeping the condo clean enough. So I can't wait for this woman to have to deal with this woman as her mother-in-law. Once I'm finally divorced from him and he gets married. But it wasn't just me. It was my Jewish sister-in-law as well. She went out one day and she came back and my mother-in-law had painted her shelves in her living room. Like, she left to go out shopping, comes back, the living room is a different color. And I remember thinking, like, I would have, like, freaked out at that point. It's like, what do you mean you painted my living room a different color? And she's like, oh, well, it just needed a different color. There was no boundaries. When we moved into a new house, she wanted to come and decorate the house. And, she did. She showed up with curtains. With curtains and a rug and all, and it's not my taste, but I couldn't say anything because then she said, my mother just died 2 months ago and I need a project. So I let her do this. And, right before the separation, I got to the point I was so mad. I ripped those curtains down. It's like, no, this is my house and I want to have the curtains that I want to have. And it was the same with my bedroom. My bedroom had the bedspread that she had picked out. It had the curtains that she had picked out. And I remember saying, there are too many women in this bedroom. There only needs to be one woman in my bedroom. And so I remember taking down the curtains, getting rid of the bedspread, getting rid of some furniture that she'd given us. But there was just no boundaries. And there was also a time when we had the family over, like even at my cooking, she had to be in my business when it came to cooking. And we were having a baby dedication of our daughter the next morning at the church. And so his entire family's staying under our roof. And, I was trying to figure out what I was going to cook. I was excited because I like cooking for people. And she tells me, no, you will cook spaghetti because you cook spaghetti for a big group. I was like, okay, fine, whatever, I'll make spaghetti. Well, then she tells me, oh, I'm on Weight Watchers, so you need to cook whole wheat pasta instead of regular pasta. I was like, okay, I'll cook whole wheat pasta. So I had to make a special trip to the grocery store. I got whole wheat pasta. I get back, I'm making the spaghetti, and I'm browning up some hamburger, to put in the spaghetti sauce. And my father-in-law comes in, you really gonna put that much meat in the sauce? And I was like, and it was like a pound of meat, and the pan is like this huge, that I'm putting the sauce in. I'm like, yeah, it's meat sauce, bolognese. Yeah, I'm putting that much in the sauce. Okay. Not 2 minutes later, here comes my mother-in-law.
Oh, are you really going to put that much meat in the meat sauce? We're all on Weight Watchers. We can't have that.
I'm like, it's really not that much meat.
Okay.
Almost like clockwork. Here comes my sister-in-law, her daughter, not the Jewish sister-in-law, but her daughter. That's an awful lot of meat you're putting in that sauce. I slam the spoon down. And I walk outside, Narc is outside, piddling in the yard, trying to escape his family. And I say, I'm about this close to leaving, taking our daughter. I will see you in the morning because I cannot deal with these people. I've been married for 7 years now. I know how to make spaghetti. So he must have went in and had a talk with them or whatever. But, then my mother-in-law comes back and she says, thank you for cooking whole wheat pasta because, my daughter-in-law, she was talking about my Jewish sister-in-law, she's on Weight Watchers and she would probably raise a big stink if you made whole regular pasta. Now, my mother-in-law was the one that wanted me to make the whole wheat, but now she's trying to say that my sister-in-law is the one causing all the problems. That was triangulation, but I didn't know what that was back then. But, there was just always something, like our anniversary was 2 days after Christmas. We got married on December 27th. So, we were always, during our anniversary, we were always visiting family. And, that night that was our anniversary one year, we wanted to go out to eat. Well, she couldn't just stay and watch the kids. Instead, she had to take us out to dinner for our anniversary. I'm like, no, really, we want to spend some time on our own. Oh, no, that won't do. Because she had to be there. She had, to be there to see, if we're really the happy couple or, she was curious. But, it was all kinds of boundaries, always just being violated. But, what I can say is that, narcs are ridiculous. Narcissists are ridiculous. I don't think they know they're ridiculous. I don't think that they realize that they're stepping over boundaries because they feel entitled that this is, that they should know this information or they should be involved or, they'll even pass it off to say that they're being helpful. But they're really not being helpful. They're being ridiculous because narcissists are ridiculous. That's all for now. Be vigilant, be safe, take care.